The rain was beating rhythmically against the window pane that night, creating a sorrowful melody that reminded me of the hardship and despair that was this city's soul. I was at my desk polishing off a bottle of bourbon that tasted like old regrets and looking over recent case files when the office door creaked open. I didn't know how she'd made it past Velma, my secretary, but when I saw her, I didn't care. She stood in a cloud of cigarette smoke, creating a gray haze that permeated the air. But even through the haze, you could see she was all woman, with hair as yellow as the sun, legs that went on for days, and curves wrapped in a dress so red it would stop traffic. She walked in with a graceful step that made me think of a cat on a tightrope. Her eyes had the look of trouble and tragedy, but I still felt a certain sort of stir when they met mine in an intense stare. "I hear you're the best private investigator in town," she said with a silky voice that went down a hell of a lot smoother than that bourbon. "I'm hoping you can help me," she purred. "My associate has gone missing, and I'm afraid he's gotten himself into something deep, something dangerous." "You came to the right guy," I said as I lit up my own cigarette, letting the smoke curl lazily around the room, mixing with her clear desperation and my hopefully hidden excitement. "Why don't you take a seat and tell me all about it?" I offered. As she sat down, the leather groaning beneath her like I'm sure many men had before, she glanced over at my bookcase, noticing the rows and rows of numbered, uniformed white spines and red titles. "What are those?" she asked. "You got a good eye, kid," I answered. "Those are why I'm the best in town. That's the complete collection of Hard Case Crime, an American publishing imprint founded by mystery writer Charles R. Day in 2004. It focuses almost entirely on hard-boiled crime fiction, regularly releasing paperbacks that, in both editorial content and appearance, are meant to echo the classic paperback pulp crime novels of the 40s and 50s. Their collection includes numerous reprints of classic or unfairly forgotten titles from the pulp era, from such famed mystery writers as Earl Stanley Gardner, Mickey Spillane, Donald Westlake, Gregory MacDonald, and Max Allan Collins. But they also frequently publish new novels written for the collection by authors looking to replicate that old-school, hard-boiled style. They've worked with Stephen King on 3 releases, 2005's The Colorado Kid, 2013's Joyland, and 2021's Later. And in 2020, they published Are Snakes Necessary, the first-ever crime novel from acclaimed film director Brian De Palma, which he co-wrote with Susan Lemon. All told, they've released over 150 titles since their founding. I noticed that as I'd been talking, she'd gotten up and walked over to the bookcase, was pulling books from the shelves and gazing adoringly at the covers. "Ah, I see you've noticed their other distinctive feature," I said. "As all hard case crime books feature original painted illustrations done in the style common for paperbacks of the pulp era, featuring beautiful women and scenes of violence, sometimes both, and done by such famed pulp artists as Glenn Orbick and Robert McGinnis." "That's funny," she said, holding one specific book in her hands. "You say they're all painted covers, but this one looks different. This cover... Is this a movie poster?" "Oh, that," I replied. "Yeah, that one is something special. The only movie novelization Hardcase has done in its entire history, written by the imprint founder himself, Charles R. Day. It might seem like a strange decision, but if you've seen the movie, you can understand why Hardcase was eager to associate with it, as that movie was also a loving tribute to the same kind of hard-boiled crime stories the imprint was made to keep alive. In fact, even though the movie didn't get any sequels, many, including myself, have wondered why they haven't just kept publishing new adventures of its titular characters in regular hard-case crime releases. Seems like a missed opportunity if you ask me." "But I don't understand," she said. "I certainly recognize the 2 actors on this cover, but I don't think I've ever heard of this movie." I took a deep breath and let out a long sigh. "You and most of the rest of the world, kid. You and most of the rest of the world." The year is 2016, and Warner Brothers is looking to launch a throwback, auteur-driven comic crime mystery franchise with The Nice Guys.
0.
Welcome once again to Failure to Franchise, the show dedicated to some of Hollywood's most infamous mistakes, missteps, and misfires. This is Trev.
And I'm Chris, and stuff.
Chris, how many times have I told you don't say and stuff? Just say Chris.
And whores?
don't talk about our listeners like that.
Hey, we don't like making fun of listeners.
No, we don't like making fun of listeners, for sure. There's two things we're known for. We don't like making fun of actors, and we don't like making fun of our listeners.
100%.
And if you're an actor who's listening, you're like, especially, you're off limits for us, for sure.
Yeah, no.
So Ryan Reynolds, we know you're listening. Anyways, you totally got drawn in by that Green Lantern episode.
Yeah.
So, Chris, do you feel the holiday spirit in the air?
I do. It's nice. You know, up here in where I'm in Canada, it actually hasn't snowed yet. So that's been actually awesome.
I just assumed it had never stopped snowing from last year. I just picture you in like a frozen tundra, you know.
We get an annual July dump. But other than that, no. It's been good. It's been good. How about you?
Yeah, it's starting to feel it. You know, starting to feel hear the Christmas music everywhere. Or should I just say that one Mariah Carey song that everybody plays incessantly? You know, we're post Thanksgiving now, so it's starting to creep in. Soon I'll start watching bad Christmas movies with my fiance. You know, so yeah, I'm starting to feel it. And I think the extra holiday spirit this year is that we have made it through the DCPU, and I don't have to watch any of those anytime soon. So, you know, I do have a little extra pep in my step.
Yeah. But you still torture yourself with bad movies, hey?
Yeah, I know. I can't. It's a sickness. It can't be helped. It
is. There's something wrong with you. Like you you recently watched Good Burger for the first time, I know, to get ready for the second one, and you hated the first one, and then guess what, listeners? He hated the second one.
Spoiler alert: the second one is bad too.
and like
they had years to write better jokes, and they did not. They slept on the job.
Yeah, and I'm always following Trev's letterbox so closely, being like, why is he borderline depressed?
I like them. I like how you follow it, how schizophrenic my letterbox might be, because I'll go from watching like a Todd Browning like 1920s silent film and be like, you know what, now I'm going to throw on Good Burger too, I think.
You're an insane person.
But anyway, we're talking about the holidays because, Chris, can you believe it? This is the third annual Failure to Franchise presents Trev and Chris-Tmas.
Yes.
Yes, so we're back with our annual, what has become our annual December theme, where we gift each other movies off of our, oh my God, ever-growing list of failed franchise starters.
Yep.
And this is just an excuse for us to, both, take a movie that we might not get to otherwise and, one of the upcoming planned themes. Typically, so far, I think it's usually we pick ones that we think we'll actually kind of enjoy talking about, or we know we have a history with, or something special. So if you listen to the last episode where we covered The Flash, yes, we did it. We survived it. But at the end of the episode, you heard the movies we picked, and we're starting off with the movie I Gifted You, Chris. And I already kind of discussed my reasonings for that last time, so let's just get right into it. This time, this episode, the first episode of Failure to Franchise presents Trev and Chris-Tmas, we're looking at 2016's The Nice Guys. Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
For sure. It is directed by Shane Black, most famous for Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Iron Man 3. He created the Lethal Weapon franchise. He also wrote the film with a partner, Anthony Begarazzi. Anthony's only feature thus far, by the way. He has written the Roadhouse remake, though. That is yet to be released. That was the one that Ronda Rousey was supposed to be in, right? And then they changed it to another UFC fighter?
There was a period where it was supposed to be like a starring vehicle for Ronda Rousey, I feel like, and then suddenly someone's like raised their hand. One intern in the back of the room raised their hand and goes, hey, did anybody notice she can't act? And then everyone's like, oh, no. And then they're like, what if we got Jake Gyllenhaal instead? That might be an improvement. So
Right. Yeah. That's who's in it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal's playing the new Dalton.
Oh, no shit. Okay, cool. The budget of The Nice Guys is $50 million. Domestically, it made $36 million, and worldwide, it made $71 million. So it was a underperformer for sure. It went up against Neighbors 2, Sorority Rising, and the Angry Birds movie for its opening weekend. So maybe that's a lot to blame. It was probably going for a little bit of the same demographic as especially Neighbors 2. And also, Captain America Civil War was still in theaters at this point. So there was this great quote from Shane Black that was like, maybe see Captain America 6 times, but not the 7th, and see us instead. So a few of us did.
Yeah, a few of us did, but most people went and saw Captain America that 7th or 8th time.
Correct.
Well, I do want to say right off the bat, though. So before we get into like the the larger discussion about this and everything, it is worth noting, and I double checked on this, Chris, just to make sure. And I think this is an important part of this episode because this one is probably a little easier for people to figure out right off the bat how we feel about this movie, so we don't need to be as cagey about it. So I think there's a different kind of discussion we can have about it because this is almost unquestionably the most critically acclaimed movie we've ever done on this podcast. 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I know that's not the end all be all of movie criticism, obviously, but sometimes you can use that as a metric to know where the weather was going in terms of overall critical response. And that's from 324 reviews. Yeah. So this is a movie that critics loved. Audience score is 79, which for this kind of movie is, still pretty decent. But like to me, even more importantly, and I know you're not as involved in like film Twitter as I am, and you don't check that kind of stuff the same regard I do. Right. But this is a movie that is like in the years since it came out, like right when it came out, but especially in the years since, I constantly see people talking about this movie still. Like a lot of like, man, why don't we have sequels to The Nice Guys? Where are the Nice Guys sequels? In a perfect world, we'd have like 3 more Nice Guys movies. So this is a movie that was like very, very beloved critically. The people who did see it mostly seem to like it. And it's a movie that's built like a pretty healthy cult following over the years. So I just kind of want to get to this idea because I was thinking, well, now I'm talking about how it's like so critically loved, but then you look at that box office score. And I think the interesting conversation we can have over this episode is this the kind of movie that only appeals to film Twitter, though, right? Because obviously film Twitter and that whole little world, right, is its own little microcosm in the larger overall movie-going public. Right. And is this a movie like, we can obviously have a conversation about, is it a movie that's out of time and out of step with what, modern audiences want to see? And is it a movie that can only appeal to, unfortunately, like a niche audience? So I think that's something we can talk about later because I'm curious to hear what you think about that. Is this a movie that could have been a franchise starter in another era but came along at the wrong time? And so, just something to chew on because obviously this is not like this is not The Flash or this is not Supergirl or Wild Wild West or some of the hated movies we watch. This is one people tend to like. So what went wrong here?
I think you nailed it by saying niche. This is very much the niche guys. It's in 2016, like I just said, Captain America Civil War was out, right? And that was basically Avengers 2.5, right? And I think this was absolutely a casualty of where filmmaking has been heading, I would say. At that point, we are in the crux of the MCU, the Oppenheimer of MCU, you know what I mean? Like, that's really all that people are talking about now, especially because the quality is high still. People are critically acclaimed with the MCU. Superheroes are still all the rage. And I don't know if the mainstream audiences were interested in, a period piece that's got a wacky darkness to it where, it's quite violent. It's quite mean at times, even though it is really, really funny, which we'll get to. But I think this is a movie that makes you feel weird because you're laughing out loud throughout it, but you're watching some kind of horrific imagery, but also you're following some piece of shit characters. Like the title The Nice Guys is very ironic, and it was built that way because your 2 main characters, played by Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling, are one's a buffoon and one's a brute. Right, who both have kind of like a dark past to them. They're both broken men in one way or another. And I don't know if that conflicting tonal swings, I don't think it plays. I think you nailed it, that it is absolutely something that appeals to film Twitter. If this came out, a couple decades before the superhero rage, I think it would be considered great. But also, I think that movie already happened, and it was Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. So, which I also want to talk about.
Well, of course we will. We're going to talk about Shane Black in general, and
for sure.
I think the trajectory to get to this movie is very, very interesting because another movie podcast you and I listen to is The Great Blank Check, and I would say The Nice Guys is very much a blank check film coming off
for
of
sure.
coming off of his biggest opportunity and like his biggest success. But we have to get to that, and I think that's like a great place to start because this is very much an auteur movie. I'd say, even though you mentioned he co-wrote it, he does work with co-writers quite a bit, which I think is just him. Probably he likes to bounce ideas off of others.
Yep.
But Shane Black, as a filmmaker, as a writer or director, definitely has a very singular voice that is very recognized in Hollywood. So let's talk about the man of the hour, because if you're going to talk about The Nice Guys, you're essentially talking about Shane Black as a Hollywood entity. So Chris, before we even get into his history, let me just ask very, very simply, we can just rattle this off very quickly. You a fan?
Yeah, I am a fan, but I am going to surprise you right now. I have really only seen scenes of the Lethal Weapon series throughout the cable rewatches on like TBS Superstation, right? Like those movies were constantly on when I was growing up. I don't know if I ever sat down and watched one from start to finish. I'm very aware. I know all the references. I'm a big Always Sunny in Philadelphia guy. I know the references. But I grew to know Shane Black and love the guy with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. That's kind of where I started with my admiration for the guy. I assume yours goes all the way back to when you found out he was conceived by his parents and you were the one delivering the baby.
Yeah, no, I think he was an uncredited writer on The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and when I was a kid, I was really into that movie. It is surprising to me that I would have just assumed that Lethal Weapon would have been a series you went back and kind of caught up on. I am surprised to hear that, I will say. But yeah, no, Shane Black is definitely... Now, look, I'll be honest, when I was a kid and into the Lethal Weapon movies, I didn't know who wrote them or anything,
Sure.
And to be fair, we should point out, you mentioned he created the series. He only is like the credited screenwriter on the first one. Story credit on the second one, but they pretty much got rid of his script and rewrote it. And then he never really had anything to do with the series after that. But he created that template. And even today, I think, which is weird because this genre certainly existed before him, but he perfected so much of Lethal Weapon that like buddy cop, kind of formula is still very much thought of as a Shane Black thing.
Definitely.
So I guess we should just say a little bit about like his history even before that, because it informs his writing style and the kinds of movies he makes. In that, as a young kid, this is very important, and it's certainly important for the movie we're going to talk about. At an early age, he became obsessed with like noir pulp detective fiction. So like the writers like Mickey Spillane and Raymond Chandler, he became obsessed with that kind of stuff, and he was reading like the Matt Helms series and books like Brett Holiday, which Brett Holiday is the author who really heavily influenced The Nice Guys, I know. So he's always been obsessed with that 1950s era kind of tough talking PIs, witty repartee, quick-witted banter, men who are real men, and convoluted crime stories. Like that's been his thing. He's definitely, we've said this before in other regards, but I think Shane Black is somewhat a man out of time. Like we talk about like this not being a hit, and even Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which we'll get to in a moment, also, it's well regarded today, but also is not a financial hit. But if like Shane Black could have been alive and making movies in like the 40s at the height of film noir, I think he would be way more prolific than he is today, where it seems like he's always struggling to get his next thing going.
Totally.
But so that's his background. And then he went to UCLA film school, where I was going to say oddly enough, but this isn't odd because that's what happens going to film school. One of his classmates was Fred Decker, who fans will maybe perhaps know as the creator of Night of the Creeps and The Monster Squad. They actually co-wrote The Monster Squad, so Shane Black was a co-writer on that. Another movie I absolutely love, one of my Halloween go-tos. Of course, Chris, I don't need to tell you, Fred Decker, also a writer on Star Trek Enterprise.
Oh, here we go. Son of a bitch.
And of
14 minutes in or whatever, and here we go.
And of course, the writer and director of RoboCop 3. Less said about that, the better. So they were good buddies, and they both kind of got into screenwriting at the same time. And as you said, then he wrote Lethal Weapon as basically as like a spec. But
he was 21 years old.
21. You know what? That kind of shit pisses me off. 43 hosting a podcast with you, and Shane Black's 21 writing Lethal Weapon.
Well, what do you win some, you lose some. I don't know.
What I think is interesting about his story is, though, he didn't want to only be a writer, right? He wanted to also act. So he writes Lethal Weapon as a spec. He sells it to Warner Brothers, and in particular, he sells it to Joel Silver's production team. And that begins like a long-running creative partnership and friendship with Joel Silver, which if you're going to have a friend in Hollywood, that's a good one to have.
Yeah, totally.
Mega producer Joel Silver. And even while they're working on Lethal Weapon, he says to Joel Silver, "Hey, I see you're making this other movie where you're Predator. Could I get a part in that as an actor?" And the deal they work out with him is they basically bring him on to be an actor, but also that's because they can have him on set to work as a script doctor on set. So like most of the funny, my assumption has always been most of the funny shit in Predator is coming from Shane Black rewriting the script on set and adding in all the humor. But he also plays one of Schwarzenegger's team. But then, as you said, like his story for Lethal Weapon gets, his script gets changed, but they give him the story credit. But he goes on to write other 90s action movies, The Last Boy Scout, Long Kiss Goodnight. You haven't seen either of those either?
I haven't. I've seen The Last Action Hero. I saw that.
Yeah,
one.
I was gonna talk about that
one
separately, but yeah. Last Boy Scout and Long Kiss Goodnight. You got to put those under your queue, man. Especially Long Kiss Goodnight, which is I think is like really underappreciated.
I've just realized I've had a shame list. It's more of a Shane list, and I really do need to get to it. So yeah, forgive me, Trev.
Well, that's the thing. So, coming off of Lethal Weapon, and he became a big name right away, and he was getting to be like an uncredited script doctor and a lot of other stuff. He worked in Hunt for October and Dead Heat. He had just there was a lot of heat on him, not dead heat, just general heat. But then he had kind of a fall there where he writes Last Action Hero, which I think today, wouldn't you agree, Chris? Is way more regarded today than it was when it came out, obviously.
Oh, for sure.
People hated that movie when it came out, and I never understood why. I mean, I saw it as a kid and liked it. I don't want to say I was smarter as a 12-year-old than all these idiots were, all the movie critics were, but I got the meta comedy of it, and I thought it was really good. But man, that movie was hated at the time. Now I think people finally have come around on it. But that movie, as we know, was one of Schwarzenegger's first big real disappointments.
Yeah.
And that kind of dinged Black because he was the writer on it. Then he followed it up with The Long Kiss Goodnight, which, like I said, I think, again, people today really like it, but it wasn't a very successful movie. And that, so I think his career kind of hit, the skids there for a bit. Mm-hmm. And it took him a long time to come back. And then when he does come back, as you said, we're going to talk about this now, is with 2005's Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. So, Chris, why don't you talk a little bit about Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and, what it meant for him and, why you love it so much?
Well, this was the first movie where he had basically full creative control because this was his first feature as a director as well. So he wrote the script and then directed it. So it seems like these other movies, only Shane Black could handle a Shane Black script. So finally, after all these years of being in Hollywood, he gets his first crack at it. And in my opinion, fucking home run.
Yeah.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, to me, I haven't watched it in a long time, and the reason why is because when Blu-ray, the format, came out around 2007-ish, and I had blind bought it because I liked Robert Downey Jr. and this is right when nobody was taking a chance on him, right? In 2008.
Well, that's the thing. So before you go on, can I just say,
people
listening to this, and I gave the history, they might be wondering because you just said this. He was given kind of carte blanche in this. He was allowed to write and direct it. And people are like, well, how is that possible if he was coming off of the weakest point of his career, right? Why, after going away, was he able to come back 10 years later with a directorial debut? Well, a couple reasons. As we said, he maintained his friendship with Joel Silver. Joel Silver was willing to take a risk on him. Joel Silver gave him a very tiny budget. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang's only a $15 million budget, low stakes. And his leading man was Robert Downey Jr., who nobody gave a shit about at that point, and nobody wanted to cast. That was taking a huge gamble. Robert Downey Jr. was persona non grata in Hollywood at this time because of his, recent legal and addiction troubles. He'd finally gotten clean, but nobody really trusted that. And Shane Black did and saw something in him and partnered him with Val Kilmer for the movie. Val Kilmer also not exactly at the height of his career at that time. So it was a low stakes movie. So yeah, that's why he was allowed to make it in the first place.
And again, the only reason I haven't watched it in quite a while is because between the years of 2008 to about 2013, I think I watched it 3 times a year. This was a movie that I would bring to movie nights with friends, or hey, on Sunday we're watching 3 films, everybody bring something, and I would bring Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I introduced probably 20, 30 people to that movie, and I just kind of, I don't want to say I had enough of it, but it's when you watch a movie so much, you're like, you know what, I need to rediscover this movie in a decade from now. Yeah. That's how I felt with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. That movie is a masterpiece, and
it's
it really,
one of the most. It doesn't surprise me to hear that how often you watch it, because it's just one of the most eminently rewatchable movies of the 2000s.
Yeah. Honestly, when I do inevitably rewatch it in my Shane list, I I mean, it's very big top 10 potential, in my opinion, for me. But yeah, that movie means a lot to me, and which some people might say is the reason why we got Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. Because Jon Favreau sees this movie and goes to bat for RDJ in the Iron Man movies with the Marvel, and well, we all know how that went. So Shane Black, always, like you said, he's a man at a time, but he's making such quality, amazing stuff, and he knows what's good. You know what I mean? Like, he knows what's good before maybe Hollywood even knows.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, like, if you haven't seen it, definitely rush out to see it. But Kiss Kiss Bang Bang follows that same formula that we said Black had always been in love with. He takes it to, like, the next degree here. It is another neo-noir kind of black comedy, crime, hard-boiled detective story where Robert Downey Jr. plays a common criminal who actually gets mistaken for an actor, and then partnered up with how actors sometimes go on like those like ride-alongs with real detectives to investigate, to like, research a part. He gets partnered with Val Kilmer, who's a PI, but nobody realizes that he's like just a con man, Robert Downey Jr. But then they actually get pulled into this real mystery. And like many Shane Black films, we haven't mentioned this yet, but it's set at Christmas time. So it's a great Christmas watch because he's discussed this, like why he's kind of fascinated with Christmas. How he thinks it's just like one of the few times where people kind of take stock of their lives. And he said, especially in LA, where he's from and where most of his movies are set, it's interesting because it's not snowy, but you can kind of feel the Christmas spirit trying to like break through the artifice of the town. And that's kind of clear in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang as well. So yeah, it's a really fun like December watch. And just, man, the rapid fire comedic dialogue between Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer, like the back and forth, that's what makes it so rewatchable.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
The zingers just come fast and furious in that, and it is like, there's not a lot of movies nowadays, like in the last couple decades, that are laugh out loud just because of dialogue. But Kiss Kiss Bang Bang definitely fits into that mold.
Look up idiot in the dictionary. You know what you'll find?
Picture me?
No! The definition of the word idiot, which you fucking are.
Yeah, the movie's absolutely hilarious. And like we said, Robert Downey Jr. becomes Iron Man, and then, well, Iron Man 3 is coming around in 2013, and Robert Downey Jr. is like, hey, I got a guy. And
really repaying the favor, because what's important to note is we're talking about Kiss Kiss Bang Bang like it's like a modern classic, and I think a lot of people treat it that way. But Chris, I'm just looking this up. Budget of $15 million. You know what the box office was?
10.
15.8 million.
Yeah, see, there
so
you go.
it was not a hit, but it is a movie that took off like right away on DVD. We've discussed like this was still a kind of when DVD was more popular, and it's a movie that gained a cult following very quickly. And as you said, it started to be one of those movies where people like you were cool if you knew about Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Totally.
So it did help Robert Downey Jr.'s career. It got him Iron Man. So yeah, when Iron Man 3 comes along, he has to. I think he felt like he wanted to really repay that favor. And he brings in, as you said, Shane Black to be rare for Marvel at that time, a writer-director. And like really, I remember the discussion around that movie. I'm sure you remember it too. Was one of the first, a conversation we've seen a lot now. But like, are they going to let Shane Black make a Shane Black movie? Like, how much is like the auteur thing going to come across here? And I know that you and I are, oddly enough, I still think it's weird that we're like in the minority of like loving Iron Man 3.
Yeah, people. You said people have come around to his, Shane Black's other movies over these years. People still haven't come around on Iron Man 3 just yet.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe give it
anything,
another
I feel
10
like
more
less
years.
people like it now, which is strange, but
Totally.
especially given how shitty Marvel's become in the years since. Like, people really need to go back and think and look at how good we had it with Iron Man 3.
Like, Iron Man 3 was, well, first of all, the movie right after the Avengers. And like, what a chance to take that movie and make it a pure Shane Black movie. It is one of the only, maybe save for a couple, but I would say maybe one of the only with a true distinct voice and vision from a singular filmmaker. It does not feel like it was made by committee. Obviously, we
Some
get a big,
elements do.
Well,
Some
I was
elements
about to
do.
say you still get the big CGI battle at the
Yeah,
end.
and
multiple Iron Man.
I recently read Joanna Robinson's book about MCU, and she, and I kind of already knew some of this, but she goes into more detail and reminds us about how, during production, they kind of forced Shane Black to change his original plan to where Rebecca Hall was supposed to be the villain.
Right.
And they didn't want a female villain. So even though this is kind of shitty, she'd already been cast as a villain, and then she saw that get taken away from her, and then her part get cut down and cut down and cut down. And then finally they told her, do you mind if we just kill you halfway through the movie? And she was like, that's okay, only if you give me one really good scene with Robert Downey Jr. to make up for it. So that's like, but she was originally supposed to be the villain. They changed it to Guy Pearce. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
So there was some studio tinkering, but I think what's amazing about that movie is that despite the typical Marvel shenanigans, his voice still really does shine through.
Absolutely.
In the dialogue and in a lot of like the storytelling, and even like the Mandarin twist, which I know was his idea and which I will always still to this day defend as a great twist. I don't care how many nerdy comic book freaks still get upset about that. You got Shang-Chi now to make up for it. Get over it.
Yeah, I completely agree. So, Iron Man 3, obviously a gigantic hit. I can't remember how much it made, but like it was like 1.3 or 1.4 billion, right? I think. But again, coming off the Avengers,
1.2, 1.2 billion. Yeah.
So by far, especially when you said Kiss Kiss Bang Bang made 15 million. Wow.
Has ever been like a bigger like leap from like the gross of a director from one movie to the next? 15.8 to 1.2 billion.
I mean,
that might be like a record. I mean,
it might be. Remember though, Marvel likes to hire these indie directors that do nothing.
Yeah,
and
true.
Sorry, not do nothing, but work with nothing, and then cash in on the brand. But yeah, at this point, like Trev said before, Shane Black has a bit of a blank check, so he goes.
Yeah, Joel Silver actually comes to him. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Yeah, Joel Silver comes to him and says, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And he goes, "Well, funny you say this, because I've been working on a script since 2001. So 12 years prior, Shane Black wrote the script for The Nice Guys, but then had to retool it into a TV pilot. So he dumbed it down to 64 pages. And Standards and Practices was like, no, you can't put that on TV. So then the script was kind of abandoned for a while, and then Shane Black went on to make a little bit, a few other things. But then he is allowed to kind of do whatever he wants. They send the script off to Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. They decide to make it a 1970s period piece, which Joel Silver was worried about. But then he produced Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr., and that movie was a gigantic hit. So he's like, okay, fine, we'll do a period piece now. And
I like the way producers' minds work. Whenever you hear stories like that, where he's like, I don't know if it should be set in the 70s, and then Sherlock Holmes hits, he's like, well, people like that 1800s movie, so I guess the 70s is fine.
But yeah, so Ryan Gosling, Russell Crowe sign on within 3 days. Mm-hmm. So Shane Black talks about how 13 years of development gets greenlit in basically 3 days once everybody signs on, which is hilarious. So cool. Like, I mean, it sounds like Russell Crowe and Gosling really just wanted to work together more than anything else from the research.
Well, and not only that, but like not to keep blowing Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but I mean I think we have to. But I mean even more so than Iron Man 3, like you said, he's obviously coming off of that. That's like the blank check that gets him The Nice Guys. But you have to imagine that after other actors saw Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, a lot of them were like, "Can I work with Shane Black?"
Totally.
Because that is just a movie where like Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer just both sing off the screen on that. And it's like, oh man, can I be in a movie where I get to deliver that kind of like that rapid fire comedic dialogue, that sensibility? I'm sure so many actors like wanted to be in the next movie like that. And like The Nice Guys really does feel, like the spiritual follow up to Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, much more so than Iron Man 3 did, obviously.
And hell, for Russell Crowe, it's like a spiritual successor to LA Confidential.
Yes.
In that movie, he plays a character, Bud White, who's kind of a dumb muscle in the 50s, and kind of shares a lot of similar traits to his character in this movie, Healy. And it's almost like he ages with him. So it's almost a spiritual sequel in his mind.
I've seen that as like a fan theory too. Like some people like to pretend that is the same character, which you can kind of get away with to a certain degree. So if you want to believe that, it can kind of work.
Yeah. Also, it kind of helps that Kim Basinger is in this movie, and she's in LA Confidential, so that helps that theory. Also, funny thing, I don't know if you picked up on this, but the last movie we just did was The Flash, and spoilers, Michael Keaton's in that movie. So then we watched The Nice Guys, and then Kim Basinger is in this movie, and there's our Batman connection. So we can't escape the DCPU.
Yeah, we just needed Jack Nicholson to show up in the next one, and it'll be all set.
Yeah. Isn't he just kind of reading under a tree right now? lately? I mean, he's an old man. I get it. Sounds awesome.
You know, I'm sure occasionally he peeks his head out and looks around and goes, "What's Hollywood like now? Oh, it's still a complete shit show. Yeah, I'll just continue enjoying my retirement."
Yeah,
so,
100%. 100%. I think, I don't know. I kind of want to just start talking about the movie. How about you?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Who is it?
Messenger service. March, we're gonna play a game.
I think you have the wrong house.
It's called Shut Up Unless You're Me.
I love that game.
You're a private investigator?
There's 20 bucks in there, all right? Just take it.
No, I told you. I'm not here for that. I'm a messenger. Give me your left arm.
No!
Yeah, come on.
No!
When you're talking to your doctor,
No!
you tell him you have a spiral fracture.
No!
Deep breath. I'm not in the yellow pages. If you got trouble with someone, you might ask around for me, Jackson Healy.
I work for the Department of Justice. My daughter, Amelia, is in danger. Please find her, protect her.
March, Jack Healy. I'm not here to hurt you, so I'm gonna ask you a question.
How stupid do you think I am? I got a license to carry, dumbass. And ever since your little visit, this little baby's gonna stay right here. Don't move.
There's a couple of people I trust say you're pretty good at this. I want you to find Amelia.
You're the guy who beat up my dad.
Sucker punched your dad. You seen this girl? She's got dark hair. Name's Amelia.
What's in it for me?
He'll stop doing it.
Doing what?
Dad?
The mob is trying to spread its operation to Los Angeles. Somehow, Amelia is involved.
One thing we know for sure. Something funny's going on. Oh, this just keeps getting better and better.
You're the world's worst detective.
The world's worst. Look at the bright side. Nobody got hurt.
People got hurt.
I'm saying I think they died quickly, though, so I don't think that they got hurt.
In 1970s Los Angeles, bumbling private eye Holland March and muscle-for-hire Jackson Healy become unlikely partners when they cross paths looking for a missing girl named Amelia, following the death of a high-profile porn star. Amelia's ties to the deceased actress are unclear, but as other members of the industry turn up dead, March and Healy's investigation reveals a much bigger conspiracy than the duo anticipated. With help from March's teenage daughter Holly, their sleuthing eventually unearths corruption within the federal government.
That's right. Chris, I'll go first in this one if you don't mind.
Sure.
And let me just start by saying, this is my poster quote. You ready? If you can only watch one crime thriller about the catalytic converter and its impact on automotives, then make sure it's The Nice Guys and not Steven Soderbergh's No Sudden Move. I don't know if you saw that movie a couple years ago, but I was just struck watching this, like, oh my God, I'm watching another crime thriller about catalytic converters?
That's great.
All right. Look, I'm sure people could already tell from the intro of this episode. I fucking love The Nice Guys.
Yeah.
This movie ticks so many of my boxes. Like Shane Black, I also am pretty obsessed with that 50s era hard-boiled crime fiction. I mean, I love, like, the Thin Man film franchise is like one of my favorite all-time franchises. I love old film noir. Kiss Me Deadly is like one of my favorite all-time movies. That whole, like, tough talking PI thing is just so up my alley. But I do love when people do it and take, like, the piss out of it a little bit. I like comedic takes on it as well, which obviously he had just proven he was really good at with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I don't think this movie is ultimately as successful as Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and for a couple reasons, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Mm-hmm. But it is a really nice, like, kind of companion piece to it. And when I said earlier that, you know, all the time I see people on Twitter being like, oh man, in like a perfect world we'd have like 3 or 4 more Nice Guys movies. I'm one of those people. This is one of the ones I'm mad. I'm mad, Chris, as we talk about this, that we don't have more Nice Guys movies, because everything about this wants me to see, like, I want to see more adventures of these two.
a great showcase for Black's talents, but also, and I know it's going to be a big talking point for us, a really great showcase for our two leading men. And what they bring to the table with like their real movie star qualities. And again, you and I like to talk about the death of the movie star, but here are two movie stars giving movie star level performances in roles that are quite unique for them. So that's what I'm excited to talk about. I don't want to obviously I'll say more stuff as we go along, but this movie's great. It's one of my favorite movies we've done.
Yeah, this was in my top 10 of 2016.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, this and another movie share a similar scene that were both in my top 10 of 2016. I'm obviously talking about Popstar, Never Stop Stopping. They both have a giant killer bee gag in them. So, yeah, watch that movie too. But yeah, no, this movie is awesome. Shane Black is just a master at tough guy buddy cop movies with noir, deadpan, comedic timing. He's obviously fascinated by LA, right? Mm-hmm. But probably hates it as well, which I just love because he's so good at showing you how cool LA can be, but then how scummy it is too. So like every movie I watch of his, and obviously I haven't seen all of them as I just revealed to Trev, but they all just showcase LA as like this interesting, entertaining piece of shit. And I love the 70s vibe of it all. It's totally my jam. The music, the fashion, the hairstyles, the cars, all that shit. And then these two characters, March and Healy, are just a blast to watch. Like Gosling started to kind of pigeonhole himself into a little bit of a mopey actor, and this movie was like kind of the first time, maybe, especially on such a big stage, to see him go in such an amazing, incredible, perfect comedic performance.
It was very slippery up there, okay? I was in the pool.
You were in the pool?
Yeah.
Why?
I had to question the mermaids. What were you doing while I was working?
This guy steals scenes with a look. That stuff can't be taught.
You're supposed to be at Jessica's.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. March. My sister kicked us out. She's having a guy over.
Your sister's such a slut.
Yeah, I know.
His comedic timing is pure talent. I mean, people saw it with Barbie this past summer, but this was the stepping stones to Barbie.
That's what I was just gonna say that I've never seen Greta Gerwig say this, but like we know Favreau's acknowledged that like Robert Downey Jr. got Iron Man because of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I have to imagine Ryan Gosling gets Barbie because Greta Gerwig saw The Nice Guys.
Yes.
That had to factor in because it's it's not that he's like, not that the two characters are a one-to-one like analog, but that kind of comedic timing. Like this, as you said, this is one of the first times he really got to show it off and nailed it.
Did you fall down the hill?
I had like 3 drinks tops.
Yeah, that's why you can't walk straight.
Oh, excuse me, I'm carrying a dead body and I have a schwanz in my face. So I'm sorry, I'm not Kishnarov.
You can't even say Baryshnikov.
And Crowe is playing this big bruiser, like this guy with, like I said, a haunted past. He's always looking out for, I guess, children especially and women, and just making sure there's no like scummy guys trying to hurt them. But he's like a no nonsense piece of shit as well. Like the first time he meets Ryan Gosling's character, he punches him in the face, and then breaks his arm.
Give me your left arm. Huh? Your left arm. Give me your left arm. This one. No. Yeah, come on. No. No. Right, look, when you're talking to your doctor, just tell him you have a spiral fracture of the left radius.
No. No.
Deep breath.
But I have to say, like, we're obviously going to talk a lot about the two main guys, but there's a little bit of a secret weapon in this movie. And it has to be talked about more. And it is Shane Black's mastery of writing and directing a precocious child. Mm-hmm. And
the death knell of most movies.
Yes, and the absolute death knell. Like, it is basically an impossible feat. But Anjori Rice is how I think you pronounce her name. She plays Holly, March's child, and she's the moral center, the heart of the film.
One of my favorite movie characters of 2016, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. Her sweetness is oh man, it just adds such a great foil to these two dump trucks of guys, right? Like, it's just like, she is the genuinely nice character of the film, and she sees the best in bad people. And I think without her, this movie is not nearly as great as it is. She needs to be there to be a foil for these two guys, and really brings them together as you watch the film. You know, because of course Shane Black's, you know, buddy cop formula is, you know, two guys get thrown together, they don't like each other, they have, you know, from two different sides of the train tracks, you know, and then they gradually meet in the middle and then decide to work together and become friends. And I think Holly is the one that keeps them emotionally grounded and keeps them together as a unit.
You're the guy who beat up my dad.
Hey, no. Sucker punched your dad. Big difference. But don't worry. He just did it for money.
You beat people up and charge money?
Yeah. Sad, isn't it?
That's really your job?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
So, how much would you charge to beat up my friend Janet?
What?
How much you got?
$30.
Look,
$30.
apple pie.
Is she a big girl?
She's tall,
All right,
super annoying.
Apple
She's
pie.
always mean to me.
That's good. This conversation is over.
We're just talking.
The trio of them is absolutely, it's endearing and it's fucking funny. Like, it is so funny. Some of the best lines are from Holly.
Dad, there's like whores here and stuff.
Sweetheart, how many times have I told you, don't say and stuff. Just say, Dad, there are whores here.
Yeah, the father-daughter relationship in this is incredible. It's like one of my favorite father-daughter relationships on screen. And it doesn't do the cloying thing of making it about a redemption tale for the dad, like in her eyes, you know. She's kind of already, I mean, there's a little bit of that, but not in the maudlin way you would get in most Hollywood movies. She, for the most part, has accepted, like, what her father is, and she's annoyed by it, but she still loves him, and she will always put up with him regardless, you know.
Can I ask you a question? Tell me the truth. And don't take it easy on me just because I'm your father. You just tell it to me straight. Am I a bad person?
Yes.
Just drive.
And there are moments in the movie which play on like the idea of like character redemption and like will still then undercut it. Like I want to make, like, I love the bit in the movie where they're talking about like they both think he's like such a shitty like detective, and suddenly he seems to like have like what is like this amazing conclusion in the case and like, oh my god, I can't believe it. And then like 2 seconds later you find out he was wrong. Like they were just so blown away by it, but he wasn't right. And like I just love that the movie still like cuts it out from under him. But yeah, she really is the magic ingredient here, which really brings the best out of both of them. We talked about like how this is, you know, kind of a turning point for Ryan Gosling. I also think this was a turning point for Russell Crowe. Maybe not one that he's followed up on as much as he could have.
Sure.
But I want to run this theory by you, Chris, because I was like looking at his filmography, and you know, obviously Russell Crowe came kind of, you know, blazing onto the American scene with Gladiator in 2000, and then had that great run of like, you know, A Beautiful Mind, Master and Commander, Cinderella Man, 3:10 to Yuma. He's like a lot of like critically acclaimed roles. But in the mid 2000s there and into the 2010s, he was really getting like lost in the weeds a little bit. You know, like we've looked at Robin Hood, and then he's showing up as like a cameo in like The Man with the Iron Fist. You're like, what are you doing in this? You know,
yeah.
He's widely mocked for his role in Les Mis, which I actually kind of like him in that because he's a bad singer. I don't know. I think it like fits the part.
And at least we got the gif of him looking out the rainy window. That's the best. It was worth it for that.
But okay, I want to say I'm going somewhere with this. So if this sounds mean-spirited at first, I want to make a point here. The other thing that happens during that point is his body starts to change. You know, like Russell Crowe in the 2010s is not the same Russell Crowe that was in Gladiator. Mm-hmm. And the media really makes that into kind of a punchline. You know, it starts to be like, oh, Russell Crowe, he just wants to eat more than he wants to act, and he becomes like a bigger guy. And I will say, like this isn't the first movie where he has that body type, but do you agree that The Nice Guys was like the first movie I ever saw where I realized, oh shit, like this is how you use like the bigger Russell Crowe. Like this actually like kind of unlocked something new for Russell Crowe for me, where it's like, oh yeah, like when you like put like that heft he has now into like the role and make it about him being this like big bruiser, he's suddenly like even more intimidating than he ever was before.
Yeah, he's dangerous.
And, yeah, he's like he feels like this is the Russell Crowe that you want to see in like Unhinged, you know, and stuff like that. And it's like, oh yeah, like this guy is like, I buy him, no doubt. You know, he was always a tough guy actor. But man, like you buy him as like a muscle for hire in this because they really found a way to like use that like extra weight.
No, 100%. He's again, the intimidation factor, the bruiser factor. You don't even actually look at him as a bigger Russell Crowe. You know, you look at him as just like some fucking guy you don't want to mess with. And it's kind of a shame he doesn't do more of that. But we did get Henry Jekyll in The Mummy.
I know.
I mean, and go back to listen to that episode, listeners, if you haven't.
I think it was important for his image, though, too, because we've talked about this before in previous episodes where we discussed Russell Crowe. Obviously, for a long time, too, he had a reputation as, like, an asshole in real life and somebody that people don't really want to work with. And, you know, there's always just this kind of, like, this air around Russell Crowe of, like, I don't know, is he one of those, like, so full of himself, you know, jerk guys? But then you see how funny he is in The Nice Guys. And even if you remember at the time, how like genuinely funny and charismatic these two guys were together on the press tour.
Because these characters really meet in the film, you know? And so we had an awareness of each other. We'd met a few times, but we really didn't know each other. And we really got to know each other on this film. And sort of
in that first
same,
conversation that we had, he was very charming and very funny. So, you know, it was very easy for me to extrapolate that if we did work together, we'd get on.
I thought he was calling me to confront me about stealing all of his stuff for my whole career, and he thought that was funny. He took that as a joke, so I was like happy that went that way. Could have gone another.
And like the real affection they had for each other, and I think it really like, to me, this is a point where I started to realize Russell Crowe is lightening up later in life, and I think it's telling that, you know, we can mock The Mummy. But I think it's telling that he follows this with The Mummy and stuff like Unhinged and Thor: Love and Thunder and Pope's Exorcist. I think this is like the beginning of Russell Crowe just wants to have fun. You know, like that. Totally. This unlocks something where he's like, I did my Oscar run, you know, not to say I'll never try to act again, but I want to just make fun movies now. I want to have a good time. And that's definitely what he's doing here.
I have a question for Mr. Russell Crowe, whether he uses the Stanislavski method.
I use the Russell Crowe method. I've never been to drama school, man. I've never been to acting school. The only time I did any formal lessons, I studied classical texts for about 3 weeks. But I've been acting since I was 6 years old. You know, it's and over time you get more and more efficient, I suppose is the word, at getting to the center of what the character that you're portraying. So. Yeah, I don't even know what the Stanislavski method may be. I have no fucking idea, and I don't care to know. You know.
You just trashed 100 years of tradition.
Oh, fuck it, mate.
But that's not to say that Russell Crowe doesn't bring that pathos to the role of Healy. You know, like you said, Holly doesn't try to change her dad. Right? Mm-hmm. But she's definitely laser focused on keeping Healy the straight man, you know, keeping him grounded, keeping him, from killing people. She doesn't want that to happen. She wants him to keep his humanity. And, you know, there's this amazing scene which, where is it? Yeah, Gosling is, or I guess March. I'll just call them by their actors' names, if you don't mind. But yeah, okay. But Gosling is passing out after a night of drinking, and Russell Crowe goes on this monologue about the one time he felt useful, and it's him saving a diner from a guy with a loaded gun, and he gets injured in the process, and then you really see, oh, that's the Russell Crowe we know when he went on that Oscar run. You know, like he's not like he's forgotten where his roots are. You know, it's not like he's just a buffoon, playing around in this Shane Black universe. There's still the Academy Award Russell Crowe here. And it's amazing to see him jump back and forth between the really comedic playfulness with his chemistry with Gosling and then that amazing character beat. And I think it just really works. It really works.
Well, that's the magic of Shane Black, right? This guy was the highest paid screenwriter in Hollywood for a while for a reason. He understands that comedy is great, but you got to have real heart in there. You have to make us care about the characters. You don't get 4 Lethal Weapon movies if we didn't fall in love with those 2 in the first movie. Yeah. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang doesn't go on to become the cult hit it does if we don't fall in love with Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer in that. And we absolutely fall in love with these 2. And we should say, we haven't even mentioned yet, this movie, their first meeting in this movie is Russell Crowe's been hired to beat the shit out of Ryan Gosling and, breaks his arm. And, like, that's their introduction. But, like, even from that scene on, we as the audience really want these two to start to like each other. We want this friendship to form, and we want them to, like, both solve this case together. Like, and that's Black. He makes us care about both these characters. He gives them both a broken past. So, and that's in the tradition of all great noir pulp fiction heroes. But he gives them both a broken past that we really want to see them both overcome. Now, you're right that Ryan Gosling is played more broadly comedic in this. He doesn't quite get the same dramatic moments that Crowe does, which is fine because, Gosling proves himself the best screamer in the business in this movie, for sure.
She's dead. What do you mean she's dead? Come on! She's not dead! Open your eyes, man! She's fucking dead!
And the buffoon performance is amazing. But yeah, I think because he also has the daughter and that relationship with Holly, there still is a heart there too. So yeah, both these characters are more than just buffoons or like the funny tough guy. There's a lot more under the hood. And again, I think it'd be very easy for a lesser writer to make this a way more broad comedy, but there's something else going on here too.
Yep, 100%. Now, where I think this movie gets a little lost in the weeds, okay? And it's how overplotty it is.
Yes.
It gets a little too much. Like, it starts with a porn star that crashes her car, which supposedly is like, she's murdered. And then, March and Healy are looking for this Amelia girl. And then this Amelia girl is connected to the porn industry where the porn star's from. And then also now it involves the American Auto Association and their manipulation with government interference and corruption with the auto industry. And it has a commentary on pollution and in the 1970s and distractions and it's just too much. It's too much for me to truly, truly care about the mystery. And I think that's where this doesn't fail, but it loses focus. Because what I like about this movie is watching March and Healy for 2 hours. I like watching these characters playing in this world with the snappy dialogue and these hilarious moments and these great, fun action scenes. But I don't exactly have an emotional attachment to health, like the porn star that they're trying to uncover who murdered her. There's not much of an emotional attachment to the mystery. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, this is where like the lesson to be learned here is that even if you are absolutely in love with a particular kind of genre and you want to do your tribute to it, you do need to learn when to back off from that tribute a little bit. Because I think it being this overly plotty and this many twists and turns very much is in the tradition of the kind of old classic noir stories. Those always had many twists and turns and many betrayals and, oh my God, this is what's actually going on. And that, sometimes it worked and sometimes those movies too would get kind of bogged down by that. And you had to hope that just the main detective was entertaining enough to pull you through whatever. That's, as you said, that's the case here. But yeah, I think he lets it get away from himself a little bit in that the connection from like the initial mystery into that, this is actually about the automotive industry trying to make sure the government doesn't force them to use the catalytic converter. It's a little tenuous, it's not as well developed as it could have been. And I think the other problem with it, this is going to sound weird for us saying it's like it's so overly plotty and there's like too many elements, but I think what could have saved that a little bit is if they played Healy and March even more in over their head then. Because if it's this complicated, you almost want them to be even more flabbergasted and just completely out of their element throughout the film. I mean, they do that a little bit, but I think for the most part, the plot kind of oddly chugs along too fast for being too long. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like the movie's longer than it needs to be. There's more plot than it needs to be, but they're also getting to like the next step of the mystery too easily sometimes. And I think it would have worked maybe if like the movie allowed them to like really have a hard time figuring this all out and have it come together more near the end. So I do think you could cut this one down a little bit. It's only like 10 minutes longer than Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but you feel that 10 minutes, I think.
Yeah. You don't really care about these catalytic converters or nothing, it's just...
Yeah, the movie becomes, especially on like rewatches when you kind of know the story and you're like, well, I'm just going to turn my brain off now because I don't need to follow it anymore. the movie becomes more about the set pieces anyways. You know, when they go to like a party in the Hollywood Hills run by a famous pornographer, you kind of don't even care what they're doing at the party and like what they're looking for. You just care about how funny it is seeing, you know, Gosling get drunk and try to interview people when he's drunk. And, you know, Russell Crowe engaging with Holly sneaking into the party and watching like a porn with one of the porn actresses. And like, like I said, it becomes more about the jokes. You're more interested in like the jokes and like the character interactions than you are the story that's being told. The best version of this movie would have a mystery that's as engaging as the character dynamics, but that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. And I think that's what is a reason why it didn't grasp on at the time, right? Because again, people do need something to care about, and I think the mainstream audience, whatever piece of them did see this movie, like had a good time, but they didn't really understand why, and they didn't care enough to want to go back or talk about it more. They were just like, "Oh my god, that was just a really funny movie with Ryan Gosling." You know what I mean? Like, there's not that emotional crux to keep you invested that you run home and you're like, oh my god, you gotta go see The Nice Guys. And I don't think that was happening even at the time, honestly. Like I saw it in a fairly empty theater, I think 1 or 2 weekends into it, and I know maybe 5 people who have seen it, and anybody else who's seen it or catching it on Netflix right now, but just like everything on Netflix, it just goes in one ear and out the other. So I don't know how much staying power this had at the time or even going forward. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, its best moment should be now, technically, right? In a post Ryan Gosling as Ken world, this should be one that you can point to and be like, oh, do you want to watch him play another buffoon in a really funny movie? Like this is the one, right? But
like, did you see any of those links anywhere or any of those?
Well, no, that's what I was just about to say. I think because the movie wasn't a big enough hit at the time, it's not remembered enough for it to even come back up in that conversation now, which is too bad. Because this is the perfect time for like a rediscovery of it. You know, another thing that I think is hurting it a little bit in that regard, Chris, and I want to see what you think of this, is if this movie just had also a villain that was on the same level as them, that would go a long way towards making it like more of like a populist kind of movie as well. You know, spoiler alert, Kim Basinger is ultimately revealed to be the one pulling the strings in this after she initially presents as a potential ally, but she's only in like 2 or 3 scenes in the movie. Yeah. So that's kind of like almost stunt casting. It's almost like she's in there just for the LA Confidential connection, because I mean, I love Kim Basinger, but she's given much to do here, you know?
No.
The Vegas mob is trying to spread its porn operation to Hollywood Boulevard, and I'm doing everything I can to stop it.
Thank you. Porn is bad.
The movie actually has one of my an actor I love as an early villain, the great Keith David, and he's pretty fantastic in his scenes with Russell Crowe. But he's also, you know, he leaves the movie halfway through, and then the movie moves like the main villain kind of role onto Matt Bomer, but he's just like the character's played as just a heavy. You know, he's a physical threat. He's a dangerous hitman. He's not allowed to have. I was thinking, imagine if that character, they call him John Boy because he's got the little beauty mark on his face like John Boy Walton. That becomes like a plot point. But imagine if the John Boy character, instead of being Matt Bomer just playing handsome hitman, imagine if that was like Crispin Glover doing his Crispin Glover thing.
Totally.
You know, how much more dynamic that character would be and how much more interested we'd be in his confrontation with them in the third act. So I think that's like a misstep too, is we needed a more iconic villain. I think they had the potential with Keith David's Eddie, but he's only there for a couple scenes too, and then he leaves the movie.
That's funny you said Crispin Glover, because I was about to say Demi Moore for Kim Basinger's role. That's so funny. Both of us on the Charlie's Angels full throttle wavelength. Yeah, and I think that's because the movie is just not focused enough, right? And it does want to spend time with our main trio, which again is great. That's the reason why I love the movie. But for me to get behind such amazing protagonists, I need an antagonist to really, really hate. And there's nobody that you actually really hate in this movie. Even when you find out that who the main villain is, it does suck because, you know, again, spoiler alert, please go watch the movie if you haven't, but she ends up killing her own daughter because of this. And that was a pretty big shock when I saw this the first time, when that, the person, Amelia, who they're going to find, is killed really unceremoniously too. It's very, it's sad. It actually does, that does hit. I will say that.
Yeah. And that, we should say too, that's also a credit to Margaret Qualley as Amelia, who's like making a lot out of a small performance, or not a small performance, but a small role,
Do you think this is where Quentin Tarantino was like, I need her without shoes again in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, she's great. And then when she's gone out of the movie, it's quite shocking and horrible. But I should be fucking screaming at the screen that it's her mom. But you're not really doing that. You kind of just accept it as that. Okay, well, we're moving on with the plot now.
I think if we could have spent more time with Amelia so that the third act felt more like our two guys getting revenge for her murder. And because ultimately the third act feels more like, clearly they're sad that she was killed, but it feels more like revenge for them being fooled. You know, they're upset that someone misled them, and that's kind of more why they want to finish this case.
I also think the ending in general is just not super satisfying, and I understand that's by design. It is the point that the bad guys kind of get away with it, and I get that, and that is compelling, but it's not exactly exciting. And also, I want to really root for my main heroes, and I want to fist pump in the air when they put Kim Basinger into a cop car and she goes to jail, you know what I mean? But that doesn't happen, right? And I think that does hurt the movie, even if it is compelling, because that is a little bit of a subversion of your expectations for one of these films. So I like it, but I'm conflicted because I understand that's not what the mainstream would like anyway. So that's why, going back to is this the niche guys? Yeah, very much so. This is for film Twitter, for sure.
I think this is the irony of the film, is that what makes it perhaps like a less satisfying movie climax is also exactly what makes people who do like the movie probably frustrated that we didn't get sequels.
Yes.
Because everything about the end of this movie, you mentioned how this started as a TV pilot, reworked into a feature film, but this still very much has the feel of a TV pilot. This ends and you're ready for the next episode. And that's the thing, is like, and I don't mean this, and I literally mean that, the next episode, because what you feel like you want to see after this is the weekly adventures of Healy and March. Not a new movie every 2 or 3 years that has this same kind of convoluted plot, but like those light, breezy, like 70s cop shows. You want to see like Starsky and Hutch or Columbo or Kojak with these guys, and like where it's just a simple case every week and they get to work it out. And then occasionally, every 4 or 5 episodes, the Kim Basinger case comes back up and she's like the heavy that's, trying to still mess with them throughout the entire season until the season finale. That's really what it feels like this is setting up, like a TV show more than a movie series, but it sets it up so well that you do walk away going, oh man, I want to see what comes next. I want to see these two guys work together now.
And they start an agency where they're gonna, solve more crimes, but then Healy is now off the wagon. So like he's drinking now, and that adds another level of drama going forward. And then it just never happens. And it kind of, it's just kind of a blue ball of an ending, right? Like that's.
But by the way, we should say though, like when you talk about like the subversions kind of stuff we love, is I do love, and this is again where Shane Black can like undercut stuff and bring his sense of humor to it. I love that Russell Crowe falling off the wagon and drinking at the end is treated as like a character victory.
Yeah, totally.
Like because of the whole movie, he's like resisting alcohol, and then when at the end we see him drinking, I love that Gosling comes in and he says, "I'm happy to see you drinking again." And the movie doesn't play that like, the movie's not trying to make us feel bad about it. We're like laughing along with that. It's like, yeah, we want these guys to be drunk idiots. Like that's what makes them entertaining.
But this is an interesting conversation because I think this movie's so awesome, right? Me and you both love it so much. And, it's like 90% there. You know what I mean? Like for what it can do. But there's not like a lot to talk about. Yeah. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like it's just a blast of an entertaining romp with these characters. But because of that lack of emotionality, because of that lack of focus, we can't really get into the themes of these guys a lot. You know what I mean? Like it just feels like just a really entertaining blast of a movie. So it's a hard one.
Well, if I had another conversation point to ask you about, you mentioned that you loved the 70s setting just for like the music and the the fashion, and Gosling's rocking the great 70s mustache and everything. But I will ask you, like, ultimately beyond that, how necessary did you feel the period setting was? Because I'm sure that did butt up against some people, at least a little bit. I only ask because I can't remember if it was Black or Bargozzi, but like one of them defended the 70s setting in a way that like I just didn't agree with why they were defending it, and it's almost like I have a different defense because I'm sure you saw the same thing where they said like the reason they like the 70s setting is because that was a time where it felt like there were like everyone was like more unified, and like that was like interesting because like everyone like there was more like more diversity and people were like really getting along, so it's interesting to set like a murder mystery in that time. And like I thought that was a very strange thing to say because this is not like the most diverse movie. And I don't really feel like that's like a big plot element of it. But I think the reason I love the 70s setting, beyond everything you said stylistically, is that I just think narratively, it was way tougher to be a private eye in the 70s. Private eye movies just don't work the same anymore because if you're searching for a missing person, you just fucking look on drone footage and all the security cameras everywhere, and you get on the internet, and you have to like deny these characters that because again, we want them to be over their heads and we want them to be using actual detective skills. So like I think that's why it has to be set in the 70s.
Oh, for sure. It's kind of like I was having this conversation actually a couple days ago with some friends about how a lot of these 90s sitcoms even are all solved by cell phones, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's so many episodes of Seinfeld that can just be resolved with a quick text message. And yet we got, 200 episodes of that show. So I completely agree. I think it needs to be in the 70s for that private eye stuff, to make it harder on them, to have them have to race around LA, use maps, stuff like that. Like just be very analog about everything. And also, of course, this is weaving in the pornography of the 70s. So just even on a plot level, if you want to go that way and have, LA raunchy porn parties, I mean, it's got to be the 70s, right? Like it's got to be right after like the heyday of cinema in the 70s and be, about those porn parties. Like I think
and for however important it is like to, the audience interest, but at least narratively, Black is also doing the thing where it's like, well, I want to set a mystery around like a real historical event. And so, like I said, it's the government, trials about the catalytic converter and whether that should be made, an enforced part of the automobile. So, he's doing that. He's doing the thing too of like, there's always like temptation to be like, let's set the thing around Watergate so we can make like Watergate references. He's picking something like a little bit more like, well, you said niche earlier, not a story everyone knows about. That's why I thought like with No Sudden Move, I was like, I can't believe two like acclaimed filmmakers wanted to make like a murder mystery around this thing. but there you go. Shane Black is one of those guys too. We didn't mention this earlier, but if you like start to like read about his career, there's so many scripts he wrote that didn't get made, and they all sound awesome. And it's like I really wish and like hope that like someday we can just get like a book put out of like all the unproduced Shane Black scripts. Because I think he was like, obviously, I think he wrote a lot of like, I don't want to say formulaic, but he had a particular kind of movie that at a certain time, I think it fell out of fashion or people were worried about the budgets and not every one of them was as big as Lethal Weapon. So he wasn't getting all of them made, but yeah, I would love to like just read all of his unproduced scripts too.
Well, let's tell the listeners one of them. In 2000, he was going to produce a spec script called TikTok, sold to Columbia Pictures for $1 million. I'll just read you kind of like the log line here. It was another action thriller about a female FBI agent who on Christmas Day has to locate the bombs which some psycho has hidden around LA. And it's so funny. He always has the exact same things in his movies. Yeah. And only help she and other agents and cops have is a man who who was near one of the bombs and then knocked unconscious, which made him lose his memory. So now they have to bring him in as their only suspect. The film would take place in real time, and the tension would be focused not just on when the bombs will explode, but also is the man they caught the actual bomber or not. Jennifer Lopez and Sam Jackson were attached at the time. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's such a cool movie. And again, always like super original things. Yes, he has the calling cards of LA, detective stuff, cop stuff, Christmas Day, but all his films feel very different and independent from each other, you know?
And yes, don't worry, he finds a way to fit Christmas into The Nice Guys. He sneaks it in at the very end there, so you can still call this another Shane Black Christmas movie if you want to get technical.
Again, it's a shame this never had the sequels. It obviously was meant to. But in September of 2017, Fox gave a script commitment to a female-led TV version of the film called The Nice Girls. Mm-hmm. So that did not happen.
No, what a surprise! What a surprise! That's like, look, I'm certainly not the anti-woke crowd. I'm all for gender reversals and things like that. But that's one of those ones you just read it. I remember reading that and being like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, that movie is like not a big enough hit and not enough in the cultural zeitgeist to even bother with like a gender reversal TV show version. Like, what are you doing? Like,
it's like the most obvious junk. You know, like the most obvious cynical way of doing things. I
love The Nice Guys, and I couldn't even advocate unless there's going to be like an Apple Plus show where you really have money to throw around and you can get Crowe and Gosling back. I can't even advocate doing like a Nice Guys TV show. You know, it's like the movie just wasn't big enough for that. Like, again, well, maybe if like Black was involved, I don't know, but it was a weird direction, and yeah, not at all surprised that didn't go anywhere. I wish they had made a pilot at least, just so like maybe we could bring back our old Failure to Series spinoff. But,
yeah. Or short-lived.
Yeah.
Did you notice that Anjori Rice played Betty Brant in the Spider-Man movies? And then Ty Simpkins?
I was watching it kind of thinking like, man, I feel like I've seen her in something else, and that's it. But I really, again, this is the kind of thing where you wish that like, coming off of this, I wish it had been just a little bit of a bigger deal to like get everyone like more heat coming off of it, because you watch her in this and I feel like this should have really been like a star-making performance for her. Big time.
Yeah. But now she's just kind of fifth fiddle in those Spider-Man movies, and she's mostly just on a TV usually. So
I'll tell you something else. Did you notice that there's a scene where they have to like interrogate a young kid outside of like a burnt-up house? And it becomes very weird because the kid's like asking if they want to see his dick and everything, which again is something you only get in a Shane Black movie.
Yeah.
Tried to get a job. I offered to show my dick because I got a big dick.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very nice.
But do you know who that kid was? Do you know who the actor was?
I do not. No.
That is Val Kilmer's son, Jack.
Oh, no shit. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's great. That's great. Yeah, I actually ask you that before every episode if you want to see my dick.
Yeah, I know. Amazing that I keep saying no, but man, you just will not stop asking.
Well, I got a big dick. Another line I really love is the giving you a rim shot. That was good.
Yeah. I love that. I think when they're talking about like when they were like first discussing how they're both working the same case. And Ryan Gosling mentions that his case involves Misty Mountains. Russell Crowe's like, the porno actress? He's like, you mean the lady? The porno lady?
There's so many good things. Like, honestly, like we didn't even talk about the Nixon Angel story. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's so funny. That's a great story. And then when he sees Nixon in the pool. Mm-hmm. Man, good stuff. Honestly, really good stuff. It's amazing to me that it took me this long to rewatch it. I only ever saw it one time in theaters, so this was my second time watching it. So it's been a long time.
I will say, if I have to give it another knock, I will say, how dare Shane Black try to convince the movie-going audience that Yoo-Hoo is good, and try to get any kind of that shit tastes like garbage.
Well, as a Canadian, never had it. So
okay, well you're safe from it then.
Yeah, safe from a lot of things, not being American.
Yeah, I mean, like this for me, like, you know, if it's not obvious, this one goes right up there with like, you know, the Dreads of the world, you know, the Fifth Elements. Not so much Fifth Element in that I don't really care that there's not Fifth Element sequels, but like this certainly is up there with Dread, where I'm like, man, why couldn't America have gotten its shit together? Like more people got out to see this, because they denied me the Nice Guys trilogy and beyond that I feel we as a society, but especially me, deserve. Totally.
And most $100 million decisions should be made to please you. I agree.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I agree. Hey, at least we got to talk about it for, an hour and a half.
And it didn't ultimately, you know, whether it's still, you know, when you make something as big as Iron Man 3, it's hard to like entirely destroy your career. And if you're a white male, of course, you know, if a woman had directed this, it would have been game over. But he was still, you know, I think maybe the lesson coming out of this was, well, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang wasn't a financial hit. It's a cult hit. This is going to be the same. Maybe we don't let him do another one of those. But we still like Shane Black enough. Maybe we let him go right back into big budget franchise filmmaking. And so he follows up The Nice Guys with The Predator, another movie we will eventually do on this show. So we will talk about Shane Black again in a different context.
Yeah, exactly. I have seen that movie.
I have not.
I will keep my opinions to myself. Mm-hmm. But listeners, both mine and Trev's Letterboxd are on the.
I was going to say, as if I don't have access to your Letterboxd account.
Yeah.
And also, as if I was immune to like what everyone said about that movie when it came out. I wonder why I never watched it.
Yeah. Well, we will not be talking about The Predator next episode.
No.
Next episode, I gifted Trev 1999's The Thomas Crown Affair. Mm-hmm. So we will be looking at that one. So yeah, follow along. At F2F Pod. That's at F2, the number 2F Pod on all the socials. Like us there, like us everywhere. Rate, review, whatever you do. A star rating would be great. And just join the tribe and hit that subscribe. And that would be the cops. Good.
A reference no one will get because nobody's seen this movie.
It's just for us.